for RoboCop, there's like he has shocks all over his body.
I'll figure something out.
He's dead
Besides,
stable. That's why he can shoot perfectly. When he's walking, he's hardly moving. It's like, see, look, his head doesn't move. It's not. He's not bobbing. He's like, he's perfectly aligned at all times. So most of what looks clunky about this game is them making it feel like RoboCop. I'm telling you. Tanner, get out of here. You've never seen RoboCop? It's like the best cop movie ever. And arguably the best cyborg movie. There are some Terminator fans who might throw in on that one, but honestly,
we've got company.
I take RoboCop over either Terminator film. And I love Terminator, but RoboCop 1, oof. Strong film. It's a very good movie. A lot of depth to it too. Not just a popcorn movie. Like there's actually stuff going on in RoboCop. But yeah, this is pretty much what it's like when RoboCop's fighting, except he aims better than I do. There we go. Luckily, this is the best weapon in the world, and this is the best song ever. Yeah. Fire? Who cares? I'm RoboCop. Okay, then all of you guys need to watch RoboCop. Paul Verhoeven's RoboCop is an incredible movie. It's arguably one of the best action movies, cop movies, arguably horror movies, because it's kind of a body horror slash gore horror movie, because it has the best squibs and blood effects in every movie other than The Thing. Actually, better squibs than any movie ever. Thing might have better visual gore effects, but it's doing different stuff, you know? It's not the same kind of body horror. But you got to think about the fact that when RoboCop takes his mask off, his face is just stretched over a metal skeleton that's being held on by hooks that you can see. He's like something out of Hellraiser. But he's also Alex Murphy. He's a good cop, a good father, good husband. And died in the line of duty. Yes, died. They just watch the first 5 minutes of RoboCop. He dies. He gets killed. But they kind of turn him into Robot Frankenstein. It's a battle for his own humanity, as well as trying to figure out if he is a man or a product. Because most of the people in the movie look at him as a product, except for Lewis here. Lewis is his actual partner, and from the film, looks a lot like her too. And she is the one who sees it. Like, she looks at RoboCop. There's cyborgs in Terminator, Grump. Cyborg bias is why I like RoboCop more than Terminator? That's insane. Is that also why I like RoboCop more than Ghost in the Shell or Cyberpunk 2077? I don't know about this game to Cyberpunk, but I definitely like RoboCop, the movie, probably more than every other cyborg thing. Maybe Gray Fox. But Gray Fox isn't like the star of Metal Gear Solid, so it's a hard one. Nuke is a drug. It's the drug from RoboCop 2. This game apparently takes place after RoboCop 2. So it's RoboCop 1, RoboCop 2, then this game. You don't ever need to watch RoboCop 3. It sucks. It's really not good. It's PG-13, which was a vast misunderstanding of what made RoboCop awesome. Because I don't know, like, I guess the producers of the third one thought it was, I don't know, a kid's thing, like a superhero movie. So it's like, oh, well, what the hell would we make it rated R for? No adults are gonna want to see this film, RoboCop. They're just gonna want to, like, you know what I mean? It's like, but at the same time, it's like, but you're wrong though. You're totally incorrect if you think no adults are going to want to watch RoboCop. RoboCop and Terminator though, they're also very different, because in addition to being a good and quite serious movie in a lot of ways, it's also a satire as well. If you've ever seen Starship Troopers, it's the same director as Starship Troopers, and RoboCop was the film where he had his whole like, I can do my part kind of thing, like the fake commercials playing throughout the movie and then cutting to newsreel footage and it being kind of over the top and satirical. RoboCop is the movie where that first happened. And then he just does it again in Starship Troopers because it works really well for it. I think he's very good at making those fake newsreel commercial things. And yeah, Paul Verhoeven's a good director. Hasn't made anything in quite some time, though. At least in English. I think he's been making Danish movies or Dutch. I think he's Dutch. Pretty sure he's Dutch. But yeah, great director, though. I've always been a big fan. He did make Showgirls. Not a great film. People like it for reasons. Not going to judge those reasons. But a cyborg is technically anything that is biological as well as mechanical. That's pretty much it. It's a electronic computerized element and a mechanical and a biological element. So you could have a cyborg dog, or like it doesn't mean a person or anything like that. But what makes a Terminator a cyborg and not an android, like, say, Data? Data is an android, and Data from Star Trek, because he's 100% artificial. He doesn't have human skin or anything like that. It's, like, plastic on his face. But the Terminators, it's actually, like, cloned human tissue that grows over top of it and is alive, which is how they're able to get through the time travel machine. Oh, boy. Oh, he clipped me with one grenade. That sucks. Gotta be very mindful of grenades, apparently. I would debatably have a better experience on normal, just because I would feel more like Robocop. Robocop is way tankier than this. I'm not really crazy about the body damage not being very positional. Like, they absorb shots to their legs and don't stagger or anything, which I think is kind of dumb. Yeah, maybe the normal difficulty would actually be better, just because it would. Well, debatable. Like, I don't know. Like, it might actually. As much as I don't like dropping difficulty, it's not about dying. It's more about, well, I don't know. Should I have to shoot these guys as many times as I do? Because, like, I guess the thing with Robocop is he would just go in here and, like, level them all. Like, it was just, they would have no chance. Most of them would probably not even be trying to fight. They'd just be trying to escape. You cannot crouch, by the way. That is a thing. That's why I've not been ducking behind cover or anything. The idea being Robocop does not need to crouch. Which developers just told you which mode they developed for? Tsushima felt dull on normal, so needed to be on hard, but Arkham Knight doesn't feel very Batman until you play on hard. Yeah, and one thing I actually liked about some of the Arkham modes is there were, I at least remember a few difficulties where it turns off the little spider sense thing you get before you have to do a counterattack, and it made you really have to look at the enemies and what they were doing a lot more, and I think that actually, don't think Robo can. Yeah, no, I don't think he can either, which is why, again, like, they're doing a good job making this feel like Robocop. But I think the problem with Robocop not crouching, but still being spongy enough to die to small arms fire is it's like, well, I mean, like, I should be more powerful. I should be more survivable than this, because basically none of these guns would have any effect on Robocop. No, like, they do nothing to him. He'd just be like, is there a breeze in here? Is there a draft? Are flies buzzing around me? Oh, you guys are using small arms fire. A 7.62? Yeah, still small arms to me, man. Again, watch the movie, everybody. You'll see the gun they need to take him down with. Spoilers. Or is it? But I mean, hey, there'll probably be greater threats later in the game that it'll make more sense with. I think on these just regular ass dudes, it feels a little bit weird to be pumping 9 bullets into them and falling to them after they shoot you for a little bit. Screw it. Well, you know what? If there's an achievement tied to hard mode, I'll keep it on hard. Let's see. Or if normal just gets boring. Like, if I'm just rolling through the game on normal, then fuck, I really don't want to do it. There's not, like, it's my pride. Complete the game on any difficulty and no hidden achievements. Yeah, so I guess it doesn't matter. Which means you're right, Tanner. They might have just developed it for the normal difficulty as the experience. So, you know, we'll give that a shot, even if we end up turning it back up, because it won't change the achievements anyways. It's just experiential, which I'm okay with.
Could you advise me how a person who would like to try Nuke should go about it?
You're hoping to get your first bag for free? No way!
That
I'm selling
voice.
at half price anyway. Wait, your voice. You sound like
A future happy customer.
Robocop. You want to bust me? Why don't you do a better job of finding guys who vandalize phone booths? I'm losing customers because they can't find working payphone in this goddamn... What the is it this time?
Anybody home? John, hi, Maurice. It's just a friendly visit. You like to do laundry? You should try working at the laundromat instead of violating the basic rules.
Robocop, you have to help me. That's the red building by the supermarket.
That's amazing.
There's some guys here. I think they mean business. Hurry.
He's on the phone.
That's great. So they made it so that the guy isn't stupid, and he's like, no, like, you're Robocop. Like, what the hell? Like, I'm not gonna tell Robocop where I am as a drug dealer. But then a contrivance, but a funny one, and one that's reasonable, right? Like, drug dealers do have conflicts with each other. He finds himself in a drug war conflict and is like, oh, Robocop saying, is like, oh, you directly on the phone? Could you come help me? It's pretty not bad. I mean, you got a chance to call Robocop for backup, you might as well take it. I like this game a lot, everybody. I know it's clunky and slow, but it's purposefully so. And I think it's really good. There's never been a better RoboCop game than this. I don't care what anyone says. It's not even close. Like, this is like the RoboCop experience. It's flat out it. The gameplay itself answers the question of, well, if it's first person, I can't even see that it's RoboCop, so how do I know I'm RoboCop? It's just play it. Play it. Play it and you'll know. Like, you'll immediately know. It's like, yes, this feels like RoboCop. It feels like RoboCop would control in an ideal world in which there's a RoboCop first-person shooter. He's just clunky enough that it gives a little bit of atmosphere, but it's not annoying. You get used to it pretty fast. I'd absolutely be up for the studio making a RoboCop 2. Like, make it today. Cool. I really, really, really want them to make Judge Dredd. If they make Dredd and have Carl Urban in it and just do it as if it was Dredd 2, the movie, have Olivia Thirlby and, you know, make her playable, give her psychic powers. Oh, Jojo, come on, while I'm trying to do my review. Yeah, whistled really loud and it seemed to have stunned her, but not encouraged her to come over here. Anyways, RoboCop Rogue City. Incredibly good video game. Like, really the best RoboCop game by a wide margin. I've been saying this through the entire stream from when we started playing this, and there's not been a lot of RoboCop games, and I think the best one was the Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, though those were kind of different games in some ways. RoboCop versus Terminator games were probably the best ones prior to this. And yeah, this one's good. This one really does a lot to make you feel like RoboCop. It does a lot to feel like it's saying, hey, what if instead of making RoboCop 3, they made a movie that wasn't and they made a story that connected to the original in a few ways, connected to RoboCop 2 in a subtle way, kind of in the beginning of the last third of the game, and then in a pretty big way at the end. So you did see RoboCop 2, like not the movie, the character or the robot, the mech, you could say, in the game at about the beginning of the last act. You see him in a presentation that RoboCop is a part of, so you have to walk up onto this podium and stand there, and they're like, RoboCop 1, RoboCop 2, in the future, these drones. And the drones didn't end up being that big a deal. I found it a little bit strange that when they were stealing bodies from the morgue, and that was a part of the plot, I thought the whole thing was going to be that they were making like RoboCop 1 models, but new ones that maybe had some different things about them or had some personality limiters that were a little more strict with less humanity, and then that was going to be an enemy in this game. I kind of thought that's where it was going. I was sort of surprised it wasn't going that way, but them saying like, no, actually it was just they needed the bodies to do research to allow the old man who runs OCP and even ran it from the first movie, it's the same character, allows the old man to figure out how to get his brain successfully into a computer and essentially use RoboCop 2 the way it was intended to. But clearly in this process, just like it kind of did to Kane, though Kane already was insane, is it made him go insane, and now he's just a murderous killing machine. I think that was neat. It was neat that it tied into RoboCop 1 and RoboCop 2. The shooting in the game is really, really great. It's very snappy. So the shooting's got this really neat thing where you see the game just as the game is being rendered. I think it's really interesting that the game is presented unfiltered as you're just walking around aiming from the hip. But if you press the right mouse button, or I'm sure left trigger if you're playing on a console, it gives like a CRT filter, a pretty heavy one, and targets new enemies and gives green outlines for enemies which have already been targeted. So when you're aiming, you really do kind of feel like Robocop. I sort of think the aiming is a little more accurate when you're aiming from the hip, which is kind of neat. And then you aim down sights, and it's almost like you got to be a bit more precise to actually hit things while you're aiming down sights, but you can see the target much more clearly. So I don't know if that's just a aiming down sight mouse sensitivity thing or what, but yeah, I found I was getting headshots aiming from the hip very, very frequently. Sometimes I would just kind of be on the roll and nailing headshots like crazy, and other times I would just be playing like the dude from Polygon. And that, you ever see that video where Polygon's playing Doom and Doom 2016, and it honestly looks like someone playing it with a keyboard with one hand and like shifting over, grabbing the mouse and moving it and then firing over. Like it's pretty bad. But anyways, sometimes I'm playing it, it's just like borderline that bad. But other times you kind of get in the zone and it's just like headshot. Rocky, don't put JoJo in a triangle choke. Puppies, try to make content. These dogs, I'm telling you. Andrew was mentioning something a little bit earlier on about the rendering problem being Unreal's fault or poor optimization by the developer. I guess a bit of both at this point, mostly because I haven't seen a whole lot of stuff from Unreal Engine 5 that's just been flawless. This was probably the best running thing that I've seen, and it wasn't perfect. What I mean by that is not that, like, because I did sort of scale my graphic settings and I tried to keep them as high as I could just so the game would look nice for everybody. And for the most part, I was getting a pretty solid 60 FPS, but there was a lot of texture shader compilation stuttering by the looks of it, because it seemed like when an animation would happen initially, it would be really choppy and almost like an emulator, because emulators do that, because that part of that is they simulate the target hardware in a different way, so they often need to compile shaders on the fly. Some emulators are better at it than others. Dolphin's one of the best. It's why people think it's one of the best emulators, and a lot of other emulators can be as effective if they're like RetroArch for earlier systems, but Dolphin, which is a GameCube / Wii emulator, is generally thought of as one of the best for later generation 3D consoles. I think that the use of Unreal Engine 5 was often quite impressive, but it also made me think that if they just did the Liza P thing and just used Unreal Engine 4 very, very well, it would have been a much nicer looking game and it would run a lot better. Now, I don't know how this game is going to look on an RTX 4090 with frame generation and stuff. I'm not crazy about the concept of frame generation, because I think especially for a first-person shooter, if you're dealing with frame generation and it's telling you everything is 60 FPS to your eyes and to the frame rate indicator, but you're running at like 22 frames a second, your aim is going to feel weird, man. It's going to just not feel right. I'm not crazy about frame generation as a thing. I'm sure the game would look quite a lot better that way. And it might just be that Unreal Engine 5 is designed for hardware that's going to be available in 5 years or 3 years, you know, or even 2 years, or even now, but it's super expensive, you know? I'm still not sold on it. I really worry about CD Projekt Red, honestly, because this is also a Polish studio, I believe. I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain that this studio, as well as the Ghost Runner studio, are both Polish in addition to CD Projekt Red, and both use Unreal Engine as well. But Ghost Runner 2 was Unreal Engine 4. This is Unreal Engine 5, and the new Cyberpunk game is going to be using Unreal Engine 5. What worries me about that is Unreal Engine 5 is not perfect. Like, I know a lot of people are like, well, Unreal Engine, everyone uses Unreal Engine. I mean, like, yeah, well, I don't know, this new version, it doesn't seem like anyone's nailing it. Or like anyone really has it in the pocket so that the game just looks great, scales beautifully, and looks as good as it can and runs as good as it can on any hardware specification that you can run the game on, which is what you want even as a console gamer, because it means that more games can have a 1080p 30 FPS version on PS4 and Xbox One, because why wouldn't you want them to have that if some people want to play it? You know, because if the game just scales beautifully between hardware specifications, that doesn't mean it's going to run any less well on a PS5. It's always the, I think, misperception that people get when they think like designed for this hardware. It's like, well, no game is really designed perfectly for the hardware that it's on. Every so often, a team nails it and uses hardware to perfect effect. That does happen, sure. That isn't really guaranteed, and very often what happens is it's the remaster or re-release on the next console generation that ends up looking like the game already, or looking and running like the game probably always should have. Or if it's a PC game, how it did on a very high-end PC in the time that it was released. You know, because that tends to be what next generation console remasters. And by next generation, I'm not saying PS5 is next gen, so like that's what I mean. No, I mean that if they ever made a God of War Ascension remaster, they could make it on PS4 and I would buy it tomorrow, because that game looks really, really nice, but it's stuck at 30 FPS on PS3 and there's not really like another version of it. But I think that game looks like it was barely squeezed onto the PS3. It looks great, it looks beautiful, but I feel like the real version of that game just never came out, because unlike God of War 3, which did get remastered for PS4, God of War Ascension is just stuck on its original hardware and seems like it was only running on a machine that could barely squeeze it out. So anyways, I guess what I was saying about the target renders and the engines and the scalability and things is I hope that Unreal Engine 5 is just the kind of thing that developers are just going to have to get used to. But once they're used to it, it is going to be that engine that scales up and down with ease and makes it so that if you look at a game that was made on Unreal Engine 5 15 years from now, you're going to run it on hardware from 2038 and be blown away, because it's like, oh wow, this game still scales with like today's hardware. And that's a really great idea, and I think that if they pull that off, you know, more power to them. I think it's awesome. But I find that the Resident Evil engine tends to hold its performance a lot better than any Unreal stuff I've seen, and it looks great. Unreal 4, it seems like a lot of it took a while for developers to get good with it, but it seems like now they're quite good with it. Like Liza P and Ghost Runner 2 both look and run beautifully and scale quite well. But yeah, so I don't know. I didn't love the way this game performed, but it did look and sound great pretty much the entire time. Now, when I say that, bear in mind I'm not talking about things like the NPC character models or the voice performances of everyone other than Robocop. What I mean by it looked and sound great is the visual presentation and experience was consistently aesthetically pleasing. You'd have a lot of really neat like reflections on the street and stuff like that. Robocop, every time you saw him, he was very shiny in a really satisfying way to look at. The gore and the heads exploding and blood and slow motion, all of that looks so good that it's hard to really complain about a few frame rate hitches, but there were certainly more than would be in a game that I'd say absolute 10 out of 10 best shooter ever. Like this is a good shooter. It's a lot of fun, and it feels good despite the fact that you play as a big clunky tank-like cyborg, because they just make you feel like that. Kind of think of it like if you were playing a game like a hero shooter, like Overwatch or Apex or something like that. If you played as a character who was a giant robot, you wouldn't expect him to run and jump as fast as like Wraith or Genji, depending on which game you're talking about. You would expect that character to feel a lot more clunky moving around the map. And Robocop just feels like the way you figure Robocop should play. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. I shouldn't really say whether the demo's available or not, because I don't know if it is. It was in the Steam Next Fest about a month ago. I played it then and was like, yeah, this game's pretty good. But yeah, it ended up being better than I thought it was going to be, because I didn't realize that it would have all the other stuff outside of the awesome shooting, where effectively it works almost like a Halo system where you have two weapons, although the difference being one is an unlimited ammo Auto 9, the the Robocop pistol. What I think made this game such a successful adaptation of Robocop is that they didn't just make it a balls out linear shooter that was level by level by level with nothing else going on from a gameplay standpoint. They did kind of make it a mini Robocop RPG, and I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but by RPG I kind of mean Western role-playing game type, where you go and you talk to people and you have choices to make and you can influence things. No more so than like a Far Cry game or maybe a Fallout game, but if you were just playing like one Fallout DLC essentially. And that really did a good job of pulling you into the shoes of Robocop and making you feel like, yeah, you're Alex Murphy brought back from the dead as this cyborg killing machine who it really does have a good heart and is a good cop and, you know, has the best interests of the community at heart, but is also a Frankenstein monster in a lot of ways. So I always found Robocop to be a really compelling character. I love the first movie. I think it's one of the best movies I've ever seen, to be honest. It's up there probably in my top 5. Yeah, like Robocop is Paul Verhoeven's Robocop. The first one is just a wonderful, wonderful movie. And this really does a great job of feeling like Robocop 3. And part of that is you do the human side of Robocop as well. Like you go and help people out with disputes they have, 911 calls, anything that they have going wrong in their life that has to do with crime. You help out a drug addict and get him to kind of turn around his ways and decide to start, you know, putting his efforts towards helping the community and doing things to satisfy his sense of civic duty. And I think that all that's really cool. Lewis being in there was nice. I would have liked it if she was out with you more often. I think it would have been really neat to have her throughout the entire game. It's possible they might not have been able to afford the Lewis actress for that much, so they, spoiler alert for Robocop, in 3, 2, 1, they had her in a coma for a good chunk of the game, and you have this new sort of, I don't know, kind of Miles Morales like plucky teenager looking dude as your new partner effectively, but he acts as more a I don't know, he's not really side by side with you very much except for in one mission, so most of the time he's just your guy in the chair, if I like to use that term. But he's cool, you know, and he has a hard time at the police station, but he's a good kid with a good heart, and you know, I kind of wanted to help him out. I wanted to see him succeed. He seemed like he'd be a good cop someday and that he'd have the same kind of morals as Alex Murphy, aka Robocop. I thought the story was really, really good. If they made this story and shortened it into a Robocop 3, I would have been much, much happier with it than the movie they made, which they called Robocop 3. There is no Robocop 3. There is a Robocop 1, 2, and Rogue City. I'm going as far as to say this much. Like this was good, man. I think that if you like Robocop and you like first-person shooters, you should absolutely play this game. As much as I don't like giving the number scores, I think that it would be safe for me to call this an 8 out of 10 for me, because I think it's much better than above average for how they could have adapted Robocop into a first-person shooter. It's not just good, it's really, really good in a lot of ways, despite some performance issues and angry playing puppies. Oh, hey Perry, how's it going? Yeah, no, this game's great. I just fought a T-47, beat him, and I got in trouble for it. I'm a little pissed off. But yeah, I strongly recommend playing Robocop, Perry. If you like this game, their Robocop game is great. This is a janky game with a lot of heart. And it's a lot of fun. I would argue Robocop is the same. I recommend the standard difficulty goes. Their hard difficulties are not very much fun.
Forget I asked.
They don't seem like they're balanced correctly. No, I might just suck. That's also possible. But I normally play shooters on hard though, so like their games for some reason feel a little too rough on their hard mode, especially considering they have a level above hard. So it's like, well, I don't know. Would have dialed it in a little more. At least for Robocop, I think the difficulty is just scaled oddly, because it's very hard in the beginning of the game. And then you get so powerful by the end. So I was kind of like, should I crank it up to hard now? But I honestly just wish they balanced the enemies differently. I think the best bet for Robocop would have been if they had headshots on skin or a single kill, but helmets can be knocked off with one shot because you have to shoot people with helmets like 10 times before their helmet pops off, and that feels a little bit strange even on normal difficulty. So, and they're tankier on hard. So I think what they should have done is been like, hey, gang member characters that have no armor, no helmets or anything, they're trash mobs. Like you can just mow through them because you're Robocop. The ones with armor are a little harder to take down and have more intense weapons that are geared towards damaging Robocop. That's not a thing in the game, but I'm saying do that. And then it'll make a little bit more sense to be like, okay, this game is getting a bit harder because I'm dealing with more challenging enemies. So the video store was like a series of, hey, here's a bunch of trash mobs that you're going to fight room after room after room of them. And the level you're at right now and the level these enemies are at, because they're basically the first level enemies, like level mission 1 enemies start coming at you in waves and you just mow them down. And I was like, yeah, this is always how fighting these guys should have been. They never should have been tankier because my pistol wasn't strong enough yet. And that's kind of the only problem I have with the Robocop combat and the way it's designed, but it's a lot of fun. And I think that even on normal mode, it was pretty challenging for a good chunk of the game. But then I just started getting really, really powerful. The cyborgs and everything that they throw at you, like the UEDs, they're not that strong. I really like the final boss fight though. I liked it a lot. Thought it was good. So I don't know, man. Like I think they're both worth playing. They're worth money. They're worth the purchase, and they're worth yeah. More so than the money, they're worth spending the time on. Which is why I wanted to play this game, because I've had it for a while, probably since 2019 actually. I think I got it on a GOG sale. It was like $20, so I was like, oh, okay. I've heard good things about this Terminator game, but I never got around to playing it. So now, having played their Robocop game, I kind of decided, hey, let's do some Terminator, man. Let's see what this game's all about. And honestly, I enjoy it quite a lot. They really kind of nail the atmosphere of future Terminator in this game, just as they nail the atmosphere of Robocop in their game. I mean, all their games are sort of janky, but you know, that's got some charm. I hear their Rambo game is terrible though. Most people kind of agree on that. I think that it was kind of released unfinished and it just kind of broken, so it's not really good at all. But hey, I think they pulled together a pretty good video game here, man, for Terminator. And Robocop is kind of better, even if the performance isn't quite as good. But its production value is a lot higher than Terminator's. I'll say that for sure. Terminator just runs better because it's a lower target spec, which is what I always advocate for. Just move that target specification, just go. And then all games are going to run really well on a lot of systems. And the people down here who have crappier systems or older consoles could still play like a 1080p 30 FPS version of these games if they wanted to, because they scale well, because the target's reasonable, and they're using an engine that's flexible. Like that's why I like the Fox engine so much, because I was like, wow, this game, like Metal Gear Solid 5, runs on PS3. It's crazy. Like Metal Gear Solid 5 is a really nice looking game, man. It's pretty neat that it's like, well, you got the PS3 version and 720p 30 FPS, but you can play it on PS4 and it's 1080p 60 FPS. And I was like, what? That's crazy. It's awesome. Why don't they do that more? What's this going to look like on PS5? And I don't know. What does Metal Gear Solid 5 look like on PS5? I haven't tried, but looks really good on a PC. I'll say that much. Unreal 5 though, I don't know, I'm not convinced yet. I hope I am sometime. I hope it starts really impressing me. But it seems like at least the PC ports are having a lot of optimization issues, and that might be on the devs, but I feel like the common variable is the engine. So it's like, well, if all the UE5 games seem to have these weird shader compilation issues, is it the devs? Are they just not optimizing it, or does the engine bear some responsibility here? You know? Anyways, I'm not a game dev. I just play the final products and can be like, hey, I notice a trend.